Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by GoCamp.Pro. We've been podcasting together for 11 seasons, but we knew we needed to continue. Why? Because like people grow and change, so has our industry. So here we are, ready to discuss new challenges, new ways of handling situations, new advice from those doing the work. Running camp should be about people, not paperwork. UltraCamp helps you manage staff, registration, and communication in one place, so you spend less time on tasks and more on camp. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. New ideas to help us all do our jobs better. Our commitment to intentional leadership training just grows stronger every year. So join us for season 12 of Camp Code as we once again do all that we can to help you develop your best ever leadership training. So welcome everyone to our second podcast of season 12. Oh my goodness, season 12. All right. So as always, we'll start with some introductions. Gabrielle.
Hey, everybody. My name is Gabs. My pronouns are she, her, and I work with Camp.Pro. I'm one of the camp directors, and we focus on creating a positive female environment for all gender minorities.
Love it, love it. And I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and GoCamp.Pro. My pronouns are she, her, and when I'm across the border, also L, and that's the Ontario-Quebec border. And I'm a camp consultant and trainer and author who eats, sleeps, and drinks staff training. I see opportunities everywhere I go. I write them down and I keep them for next season's trainings or for our podcast. So it's just us today, Gabs, and we're going to chat about building community with the staff members who live and work on the periphery of camp. So these might be your maintenance people, your kitchen staff, your drivers, your admin folks, your nurses or doctors, but those people who are not necessarily directly involved with the programming staff, the counselors, and the campers' daily activities. So we all know a positive camp culture plus your mission statement are key to building that strong foundation for your summer. That's a given. We've talked about that for 11 plus seasons. And we work hard to train our program and our counseling staff, those who deal with campers and parents all day or around the clock, to build an inclusive and supportive culture with them. And we've spent 11 seasons chatting about this topic. But today, we want to focus on the staff members who are so integral to camp, but who work sometimes off-site or in buildings where campers and many staff members don't see them and all that they contribute. So I love this topic. Anytime somebody's like, we want to talk about community building, I am just in my happy zone.
You are.
So peripheral staff often make camp possible, but it's easy for them to feel left out of the heart of community. So I wanted to come up with some really practical, specific camp ready ideas to make these folks feel included. So I divided them into a couple of categories. So the first one would be like daily or weekly practices. And I know Gab is going to talk specifically about some instance that she had this summer at camp and how they dealt with it and how they made it work for them. But I'm kind of just giving you ideas, brainstorming ways that you can make people feel included. So I would create some daily and weekly practices. So story sharing is always a really good thing, getting people to know more about each other and a little bit more about what they do, what makes them tick. So I would be introducing these staff members during staff training with fun facts or with a short story about them so that the frontline staff know who they are and what they do. And maybe, a fun fact, like in their spare time, they love to build Lego, or, they have yet to find a hot sauce hot enough for them, something like that. Because then you're going to find people on your staff, they're like, Lego, me too, let's have a conversation. So you can also put their photos on a wall or on a PowerPoint presentation when you're doing this so that everybody recognizes who they are, even if they're not in the room, and they understand what they do all day. You can do shout outs at meals. So like at least once a day, you want to acknowledge something that the peripheral staff did. Like, let's thank the kitchen staff this morning for making those pancakes extra fluffy or whatever. You can also do gatherings of staff. So invite your kitchen or your maintenance or your admin staff to join those lineups that happen at camp all the time. So maybe you invite them to flag raising, or you invite them to campfire, or you invite them to be a part of opening day if their roles and job doesn't take them away from that. But, a few minutes of presence reinforces that kind of belonging. I would also do some camp announcements, like when drivers bring campers safely to camp or maintenance fixes something quickly, you can call it out in an announcement so that everybody sees their impact. You can thank the kitchen staff at least weekly. So we would always have them come out of the kitchen for a round of applause. There was a song that, we sang, and get them involved that way. And so you're thanking them. People can see who they are and they can feel appreciated. Or get them involved doing a skit or something. We had one kitchen staff years ago that loved to do announcements. And so every day they would pick a different meal, whether it was breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and they would come out prior and tell us what the next meal was going to be. We had to guess by the way they did their announcement what the next meal would be. So this, I still see it perfectly in my mind. So a kitchen staff member came out of the kitchen and yelled bread and then slid across the floor. And then another person came out and yelled cheese and slid across the floor and jumped on the bread. And another person yelled meat and slid across the floor and jumped on that person. And then the next person came over and was like, tomatoes, that kind of thing. And then the cook, who was a very big, burly guy, came out and we're all like, oh no. And he yelled bread. And we're like, and before he jumped, he said, what are we having for lunch? And everybody yelled sandwiches. So, just a fun thing. It didn't take them a lot of time, but it made them feel really included. Including them at meals, I think, is also important. So we've talked about this before, but honestly, it's probably been 10 years. We had grandparents at every session, and grandparents are not the people who are actual grandparents biologically of these children. But every cabin was assigned to grandparents. And like grandparents, they didn't spend a lot of time with them. They visited when they could. Maybe they spoiled them a little and then they left. So all staff were included as grandparents. All of them, including kitchen, maintenance, admin, everybody was included as a grandparent. So they were paired with a staff member who was always on site so that that cabin could be assured that some grandparent would be there at one time or another. But this really allowed those staff members to get to know some campers, to learn about other parts of camp. And they did things like sit with their grandkids 1 or 2 meals a week. They sat with them at campfires occasionally. They went to the cabin and said goodnight. They would get creative and leave a note or secret treats. So you're always really lucky if one of your grandparents worked in the kitchen, but they would, leave a little thing of cookies on your porch. And this role was not created to take a lot of time out of their work week, but just enough for them to say hi to their campers. So it was always really fun for me when I'd be, in the breezeway and I'd see the kitchen person coming out of the kitchen and a camper would yell, hi, grandma, or something like that. And, the big smile on the woman's face because there was that connection to that kid. And then you can also do things like create a staff appreciation dinner where program staff serve the kitchen staff and the maintenance team. And this doesn't have to be at a break or when there are no campers there. Like it could be any time throughout the summer. And it's a great way to show appreciation and help them feel like their roles are important to the overall workings of camp, because they are, and lets them know that you couldn't do it without them. So just ways to show them some appreciation and get them out of the places where they are normally working so that they're seen by campers especially. Gabs, what tips and tricks have you used to build this community or bring positive camp culture to these very important folks who keep camp running smoothly but aren't usually seen by staff or campers on a regular basis?
I know. When we were discussing what topics we wanted to do this season, this was one of my top ones because, like a lot of camps, some of these jobs are very, very time consuming, like camp counselors,
Yes.
but part of camp counselors' time consuming jobs is being part of the community. And it starts with being part of a community within our staff training. But whereas some of our maintenance team or our kitchen team, it really is when you arrive, you're starting the job. There is some training, but building community sometimes, pardon the pun, takes a back burner to
Well done.
thank you to the job. And I think about our healthcare team, and yes, our driving team, our maintenance team,
Hmm.
our site care team. And the first thing, I mean, obviously we always talk about mission. So hiring the right staff, do they fit within your mission? Is this somebody that you feel safe with your kids to be around? And I would say yes to all the people that we hired, and we're really privileged that way, that not all organizations, is kitchens can be a little prickly places sometimes, and communities. And so sometimes they're not even a community. So you inherit somebody from a restaurant that yelling at
Mm.
somebody is just normal practice. And then you're
Right.
mixing that person with your team, and that just doesn't fly. So do they understand the values of your organization? If you're able to find somebody that's qualified and has the values of your organization, how do you incorporate them into your camp? And I think learning about them individually is really important and helpful. Our site care team that cleans our showers and bathrooms and sweeps our floor, they're very painfully shy, two women that have been working with us for over 15 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
all of our staff know their names. All of our staff were told to say hi to both of them. They do our laundry. They insist on folding everybody's laundry, even if we say you do not have to. You can just put it back in the
Amazing.
bag. No, they fold. But I know if we did something along the lines of, okay, everybody, it is, let's make them part of an announcement, they would quit. They would say, I'm out.
Yeah.
I will not do this. But some of the things that you're talking about, appreciation, I think is in a kind, like gentle way, would make sense to those two individuals.
Hmm.
So
And
some
lots of people.
letters, yes, and a lot of people. So like
Yep.
letters from campers that saying thank you very much. That's
Yes.
really, really helpful.
Amazing.
So learning about your team and what makes them tick, I think is important. And trying to do that before camp and putting that into a calendar, I think is helpful. Our health center team typically traditionally slept in the health center. We are a sleepaway camp, and there's a room for the health center team, typically there too. And some years it's fantastic. They become best friends, or they come as best friends. Other years it does not work out well because you're working together, sleeping in that same
Hmm.
location, and living together. And so of course the best of marriages couldn't stand the pressures of that. So this year, I think it's looking at your patterns and seeing what you can do. So this year we really discussed and sat down and said, how do we make sure our health care team, one of our biggest complaints was not being part of community, not really knowing what's happening.
Hmm.
So we had one of our operations or full-time staff members stay in that cabin at nighttime. And when it was their day off, then they would stay there, and they were integrated into our other staff members' cabins. And it worked really, really well. So making sort of these adjustments that maybe you've been doing
Yeah.
for years and years and years, and saying maybe this is not helping us. And I would say lastly, not lastly, because we have other things to say, of course, but one of the last things I want to put in this clump of information is, if they're here for the right reasons, they might not have all of the training tools to be
Hmm.
part of your community. So, for example, we are an all girls camp that serve gender minorities. So we have staff members and campers whose pronouns are he, him, they. And you have to train those staff members that are maybe a little bit older or don't have that education, and be matter of fact about it. We do have staff members that go by he, him, regardless of what your eyes can see. It's important for you to respect those pronouns. And same with microaggressions, doing that type of training with a very aware and sensitive staff. That team needs to be just as informed, because they don't want to
Yes.
misstep. And then this year the piece that I did not teach them was how to take responsibility when you do misstep, because one of my staff members did misstep, but they didn't know how to apologize. They didn't know how to take responsibility. They went over the top of being apologetic, and it made things just awkward, but we all sorted it out. It all came from a good place, but they didn't have the education. They're of a just different generation. They're not online as much as our staff are, and they're not privileged to the training that we do a training, but it's not at the extensive. They're not part of all the conversations, sitting down in group chats and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I think I think providing the tools to those staff members so that when they are interacting with your staff members and your campers, they're acting in a safe way, but they know why and how, and they know that if they mess up, how to, how to take responsibility in a way that makes other people feel comfortable. So if they've chose your organization, they know what you're about, and that's part of what you're about. You're being supportive and clear to them. Not everybody comes with this type of training, and they do miss out on it. We do training, but not to the extent that we do our camp staff.
And on that brilliant note, we're going to stop for a quick break to hear from our wonderful sponsor. And when we come back, we'll give you some more ideas. For Camp Code listeners, unlock UltraCamp's Operations Checklist for new directors, a free download to help you prepare for a smooth season. Find it at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Running camp comes with countless moving parts. UltraCamp helps you stay on top of them. Organize activities and daily schedules, manage wait lists and cabin assignments, automate billing and payments, centralize all camper and staff info in one place. With UltraCamp, camp operations run smoother, so directors can lead with confidence. Book your free customized demo at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. And we are back. So I'm going to continue down my list of practical ideas that I came up with. These are things, and as Gab said, you have to think about the staff member that you're talking about. Would they be up to doing an announcement? Would they be up to being a character in Campfire, those kinds of things? Or is that not their thing, which is totally fine? Not every kitchen staff came out and did announcements every year, but there were some. It all kind of depended on our kitchen manager at the time, but there were some that wanted to get involved every now and then. One of the things you can do is include these staff members in your camp celebrations. So, if you have a birthday board where maybe you post all the staff birthdays in a central place or something, not necessarily the year, but just the date, you could always put that up if your staff members were okay with that and comfortable with that. You could do weekly rituals. So at Campfire, maybe on a Friday night, you could gather and spotlight different behind the scene teams. So thank them or have the campers thank them, which would be even better for very specific reasons. Like, I would like to thank the kitchen staff for making such great mac and cheese at lunchtime today. Or I would like to thank our maintenance crew for fixing the screen in our cabin so the mosquitoes don't get in anymore. Things like that. And if we go back to the idea of grandparents, you can invite them to be part of an evening program or a special day or whatever your camp has as a camp-wide program, if that fits into their work schedule. They can play characters or run around with their grandkids. And this was often, I found, especially for our younger staff, their favorite part of the day, when they could do things that were fun and silly, and a way we could often introduce a secret character into a theme, because most of the camp didn't recognize them. So they honestly thought they could be who we suggested they were as a character for our younger folks, because maybe they never saw Bridget come out of the office before and they didn't know who she was. But again, only if they're comfortable with that sort of thing. I would also introduce a buddy system. So I would pair a counselor and a leadership staff member, or a leadership staff member with a kitchen staff or maintenance staff or admin, and give them a staff buddy. So they check in, they share coffee or exchange notes during the week. And our camp, of course, you've heard this before from me, we had wellness partners that we called wellies, but we always included all staff. So we would give these wellness partners a chance to connect and talk to each other once a week. We'd tell them to have that time together. And that was always really important. So I know that some camps, a lot of sleepaway camps, have staff who are contracted in, who come from a catering company. I would include them in this as well, and let them know that this is just a part of camp and that we are hoping just to get to know them better and offer them some more support. The other thing that I used to do was give them a secret buddy for every day of training. So if we had a 10-day training, I had 10 secret buddies lined up for all of these peripheral staff, so that they had somebody different every day who was just checking in or getting them a coffee or leaving them a nice note, but someone different every day, getting to know them a little bit and making them feel welcome. And we never told these staff members about these secret buddies, but it was a great way to see them interacting with so many members of our staff and getting to learn about people and feeling a part of the bigger picture. We also made sure to figure out ways to invite them into relevant staff training sessions. So Gab was talking about that earlier, that they do some training, but for example, kitchen staff need to learn about camper allergies, or drivers doing short camper, they need to understand camper interaction and how that works. So maybe we invite them to watch some role playing. It shows that their role connects to camper care as well. We also used to have alumni volunteers, and I know camp still does this, cook during spring staff orientation weekend and during leadership training 6 weeks later. This way, all the staff could participate in leadership training. So there was nobody in the kitchen who was going to work there all summer. Now, sometimes when there was a session that was very specific to just counselors, they would go into the kitchen and work with the volunteers and get up to speed on their jobs and how that was going to work as well. But we would then also match them up with a study buddy who would take notes and chat with them about sessions that they may have had to miss because they actually had to go get dinner ready or whatever it happened to be. And the other thing that I would suggest for that is get them, if they're interested, to be tour directors on opening day of sessions. So we had them do it for parents, but we also found that it was really fun to do it for campers. So we asked our maintenance staff to lead really fun behind the scenes tours of camp for new staff and kids. And the kids loved it because they got to go into the maintenance shed and see what was in there, all these kinds of things. And it just reframes these staff members as experts at camp too. And my last little section for this one would be the recognition and communication. So, these things are great ideas for all staff, not just, kitchen maintenance, admin staff, and so on, but like a daily thank you board where there's a big whiteboard and anyone can write public thank yous, which would be great. If you do a camp newsletter or you have camp news at all, feature a spotlight on a kitchen or an admin staff person every week. Leadership can intentionally write short notes, specific notes for each team once per week and leave them in spots where the staff will find them. So if you just have that schedule set up, we've always got a leadership team member who's writing a thank you note to some particular group. And finally, check-ins. Like this one's pretty obvious, but leadership team members should be checking in with them at least daily during the first week or so, and then at minimum weekly after that. So listening to their concerns, getting their point of view on how things are running at camp, asking for their ideas on how to make things run smoother, etc. And if these would be in addition to formal evaluation times, but like just giving them a chance to make camp better. Travis was talking to us about lean in our last podcast, and I bet you kitchen staff, maintenance staff, all those people have great ideas on how to make camp run smoother in their particular areas, which often clog up a lot of things at camp. All right, Gab, what else you got?
I love that. I think I was just gonna go back to the check-ins and asking them. I think that something that I learned also, I work really, really hard with my immediate team or my counseling team to speak up when they see that maybe something could be done better. And because a lot of our, outer limits staff members who typically are women and is of a different generation, though I tell them it's really important that you tell me, so I can make things better for you and for our staff. What I realized was even though I said it, they didn't trust it or believe it. And it's not because we don't have a nice relationship, but I realized I did need to spend more time so that they could trust that when they do tell me things, I'm not going to become defensive. Or what they were worried about was that I was going to get angry at my staff for, they were cleaning up my staff lounge, which I don't want them to do. I want my staff to be in charge of that. But they were like, it's disgusting. And they're both quite perfectionists. And so they went and they started cleaning it up, and they were caught in the act of cleaning it up. And I was like, wait a minute, how long have you been doing this? But they didn't want me to get angry at my staff. And I realized that they didn't realize, we're on the same team of raising not only our campers, but our staff members. And it was a hap chance that I washed. They were like caught almost with their hand in the cookie jar, except there was their hand in the dishes. And I was wondering, I was like, this place is really clean. Good job, team. I was the naive camp director. The two aunties were taking care of it, but the check-ins are important, and because they're older and because they're so good at doing their job, I don't check in with them as much, and that prompted more conversation. So I do appreciate that piece. I would say keep space reserved for sleepovers. So we our past admin person, slept at her own place, rightfully so, worked from home during the summer, did an excellent job. But we've since hired a new person just because of, shift of life and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I wanted her to meet our campers. I felt it would be helpful. She lives in Montreal, and so we really discussed how can we make this work. And one of her things that she was so nervous about was being at camp for the whole summer. So we practiced just being flexible with her coming up for a couple of days out of the year, and out of the summer. And that was really, really nice. She always knew that there was a bed available. She knew that we did have a schedule, but if she couldn't stay as long as maybe we had planned, then that was okay as well. And it changed everything. We turned out to have a system where she was here for 7 days and then went home for 7 days and then here for 7 days and home for 7 days.
Nice.
So at first she stayed in a tent, not a tent on the ground. There was a platform, and
Yeah.
we made sure there was electricity and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes carving out space so that people can stay, if you have staff members that typically, or you have roles that typically stay off of
Mm.
camp. And of course the other admin person found out about this, and we talked about it, and she was like, well, we never did anything like that with me. And she said, you know what, if I would have known that there was a spot for me on camp, I might have stayed over. And I was like, oh, I just didn't know that. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes, if there's a need that you have, and talking it out with the person, but making sure that the space is carved out, because we do carve out space for our staff, and then we do carve out space for our campers, but doing something along those lines. And I do have to create a little shout out for our older staff on camp. Our chef, who is phenomenal, hard worker. I assumed that on her days off, she would just want just to lie in bed, not
Yep.
do anything. And Jackie was like, there's nobody else on camp that's really her age. And Jackie started just inviting her to go shopping with her or to go into town together. And she jumped on that. She was like, yes, I would love to go with you. She had her own car. She could escape, everybody. Don't worry. She could escape. But and I was like, there's no way she's going to want to go to Costco. Like, she's exhausted. She doesn't want to be around food. And I would say almost every single day off, her and Jackie would go to Costco together, and it was sort of their little ritual, and they had a blast. And they would come back and they'd be like, hoo hoo, we got treats and we're not telling you what we got. And I was like, okay, sounds like you two had a great time. Like, but I think sometimes I assume, oh, this person's so tired, or this person, but they do want to be involved. So I think that the checking in that you're talking about, Beth, and everybody is different, but
Hmm.
they deserve, obviously, everybody, we all know they all deserve community. But how can we bring them into a community that feels right for them, I think is the key in trying those things
Yes.
out. But
Just
Jackie was,
ask.
yeah, just ask.
Yeah.
It's not like, of course I did ask Beth, but she, yeah, very difficult lady in some
Yes. No,
ways.
but I mean,
Yes,
it's not assuming that every maintenance staff person's going to want to do X
that's
and
right.
every kitchen staff's going to want to do Y. So
100%.
it's just finding out, getting to know your staff as people
As
and
people.
individuals,
Yeah.
and helping to accommodate their desires, their likes, helping them with their dislikes.
Yep.
Like if camp-wide games make them crazy because they can hear campers running through the forest all the time. What
Mhm.
can we do to give them a quiet time during that time if that's what they need? Those kinds of things. We're just kind of finding out how we can best serve them as well.
100%. And we had one of our alumni paints our 10-year paddle. So every camper and
Nice.
staff member we do have some campers that are 10, I can't believe it. Anyways, they've been with us for a long time, and they get a paddle, and it's hand painted. And one of our staff members said, well, of course we say thank you to her. Like, this is not something, but had the idea of of doing like thank you cards to her
Mhm.
from every staff and camper. And she was elated. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh my gosh." And she doesn't get to see the kids
Right.
receiving it. She doesn't get to see the staff receiving it. She paints them and then we gift it to them in our opening ceremony. So these little connections that you can do for the Outer Limit staff members that are supporting our infrastructure, our camp, our mission,
Yep.
we want to care for them too, but they sometimes need a little bit of their own blueprint, I think.
Mhm. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Okay, my last little section, I've got a couple more ideas, just a few
Okay.
more. We want to see if we can make sure that break times overlap with other staff members. So when community events are happening, if you make sure that those break times can coincide with those, so campfire or a staff coffee house or something like that, so that they can participate if they wish to, or they can just come and watch if they wish to, but also that there are other staff who may have times off during those times so that they're not just able to hang out with the people that they work with all day, that maybe there's some overlap there. So kind of thinking that through and figuring out ways to use flexible inclusion. So if drivers come back late, you save them s'mores or you save them dinner. Or if kitchen staff miss campfire, you could bring campfire to them and go into the kitchen and sing a song to them in the dish pit. Or you could leave notes for nurses or trip drivers where they'll find them. There are so many creative ways to include them, and you have campers and staff who would love to be a part of this mission. So sit down during training and get your program and counseling staff to brainstorm ways to help make all staff feel included and supported, and then set up a schedule. And I know you'll find this shocking coming from me, but be intentional about it. And then, because if you don't, it'll get forgotten after the first week. So make sure that this is a regular thing. And my last little bit is just a few little culture shifts. So we want to train staff to say we. So all of us are camp staff instead of program staff versus kitchen staff, which I grant I have used these terms a lot in this episode, but only to ensure that you understand the people that I'm referring to. But if we all say we rather than label us, then that might make a difference. I would make sure that all of your staff, anybody who works for you, even a catering company, has the same staff t-shirts or lanyards or ball caps, whatever visual cues everybody else has, that's what they should have too, to show that they belong, especially on opening days. And finally, leadership modeling. So we know it always comes down to modeling from us. So directors and leadership staff should consistently spend time with these teams. Doesn't have to be a long time, just a few minutes a day or a few minutes a week. Make your own schedule again and be intentional about it. But you want to show that they are central to this mission that you are all in together. And the goal is to make peripheral staff feel seen and celebrated and connected while still respecting the realities of their work schedules, which are often very different from other people's. So that's it from me. Gab, do you have anything else you would like to share? Or would
Re-listen
you
to
like
this.
to go to recap?
I think we can go to recap.
All right, let's do it.
All right, recap. All right, everybody. The way I see it is that we have 4 categories led by one, which is, of course, our mission. And within our mission, when we're hiring our staff or rehiring these staff members, make sure they're clear about your expectations and intentions when it comes to working with this camp. After that, we can build on it. The 3 other categories would be self, others, and camp. So within self, I love this idea, Beth, of the stories. That is amazing. Sharing stories. I'm putting that at the top of my list. Make sure somehow in the way that fits with that person, they can
Mhm.
share their story, their why, something funny about them, but also why did they choose to come to this camp? Why do they want to be there? So that other staff members and even campers could hear about it. Let's put up photos of them on the wall or during a PowerPoint and then get to know those individuals. So make them part of camp in a way that feels good to them. I think that the announcement piece was really, really neat. I think a little thank you from somebody, that would be amazing. But as a whole, get to know your staff. And some of the ways that you can do that is by others. So creating wellies and buddies and having them part of the tour. Just even your kitchen while they're working hard, that kids can go through and say, hi, thank you so much. Or the person that's driving the bus, or somebody's going to write them a note and hand it to them. Make sure that they feel like they have space on camp. Where is their space? How do they
Mm-hmm.
feel welcome? How do we take that extra little time and touches to make sure that they are feeling okay? And to be honest, everybody that's listening, I know that some of these staff members are extremely valuable for you. You could not run camp without them, but they can also be kind of stubborn when it comes to community. They want to hide behind their safe little kitchen counter or the washing machine or their golf cart if they're on maintenance, and that's where they feel comfortable. But just pulling them out a little bit of their shell, making them part of the community, helps them feel motivated to do the work that they already are doing so well for you. They are part of our community. We just need to get to know them a little bit better, make sure that we're all on the same page, and maybe even bring the people to them instead of them to the people.
I love that. And if you've got that, like that story idea, but if you have somebody who's super shy, be like, I am not getting up in front of staff, let alone staff and campers in a whole dining hall and talk about myself, then you can ask them, can I do it? Or can I have
Mhm.
another staff member do it? And you tell me some things that they should know. And maybe because if they're very shy, probably go, I don't know. I don't know. Have some like interesting questions prepared,
Yeah.
that you can ask, or ways that you can say, do you think Gabrielle likes crunchy peanut butter or smooth peanut butter? Or maybe she
Yeah.
doesn't eat peanut butter at all. What do you think? And get like, more people involved in those kinds of conversations, even if they're not the ones telling the story, as long as you have permission to share with the camp.
And I think that the last piece that I wanted to also highlight that you said, Beth, that I think is really, really important, and this was specific to the kitchen team, but it could be for anybody, is that you bring in maybe some volunteers or some alumni to take care of that task so that that kitchen person can be part of the training. And because they're coming to do a job, and I know that when I take my kitchen team away from the kitchen, they're very salty about it, and not in a good way, not in the seasoned way, in the upset way, because that's their baby and they want to serve people.
Hmm.
But we also want to serve them, and making sure that they're getting the training or being part of these important community moments is going
Hmm.
to be invaluable in the end. So thanks everybody for listening to this, because we care about all community members, but those outskirt staff members, we don't always have. It's hard, it's hard to make sure that they're feeling included, and doing just a little tweaking some things that we already do so well is going to make all the difference.
Well, because as a camp director, during the summer, whatever's in front of you gets your attention because there's so many things that require your attention. And if you are not seeing these people on a regular basis, A, you're missing out. And B, you could be missing out on issues that are percolating and you're not on top of that.
That's right.
But you're also missing out on giving them a good experience, the
Yep.
best experience that they could
Yes.
have as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks for that recap. It's time for us to wrap up now. So, if you've got topics you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Any issues that you had this past summer that you would like ideas on, please let us know. Or any people you recommend that we have on the show. We have a list. And so, if you have others that you would like to add to our list, we would love it. We would love to hear from you. As we say, every podcast, we are all about sharing in this industry. And if you found our podcast to be useful, we would love it if you could leave us a rating in your podcasting app. Gabrielle, how could they contact you directly?
Well, they can get in touch with me at info@waro.com, and you can check out where I work at waro.com, OUAREAU.com, and that's where I'm recording from today, which is really nice.
It is lovely to see you at
Mhm.
camp there. I'm recording from home, but you can email me directly, Beth at GoCamp.Pro, and I'm on Instagram at topaz_Faye, and our website is GoCamp.Pro. And for our next podcast, we're going to be talking about how to set up your interview process to suss out your very best staff. And this week's practice is actually from me. All right. So remember I said to create a schedule and be very intentional about all of this? Well, I'm going to give you some ideas. So I recommend that you do at least 2 things a day every day. And you can switch it up throughout the summer, but 2 things every day. So for example, on a Monday morning, maybe when you're at Flag, you could have the leadership team share fun facts about one particular staff member. Like, did you know that the kitchen team makes over 1,200 pancakes a week? Or something like that. Maybe Tuesday is the driver shout outs or whatever positions you have, maybe your bus driver shout outs. And at lunch or dinner, you could have counselors and campers make cards or signs for the drivers and leave them in their vehicles or their workspace. You could do kitchen celebrations on Wednesday. So maybe after dinner, when everything's all kind of cleared away, program staff serve dinner to the kitchen crew while they get to come into the dining hall and sit down and enjoy dessert. Maybe you can make a little fancy, have somebody with a strolling violin. If you have a violin player, we did one summer, we made great use of him, or candles on the table or flowers or something. Thursday's the maintenance spotlight. So at Campfire, you can do a short thank you skit that's maybe written and performed by campers to celebrate your maintenance crew. Maybe Friday, you're appreciating admins. So you have a staff coffee house and you save a special treat for admin staff to enjoy at a special table when they're finished with all of their work. Saturday, you can do some cross-team connection. So that's when you have that wellness check-in, the welly check-ins with your staff members. You don't need to tell your campers that that's going on. You can if you want. But I mean, you're just encouraging them to check in with that person. And then Sunday could be like the all-staff gratitude ritual or something. So maybe you could do a thank you wall and just collect notes throughout the week and post them in the dining hall for everybody to see. So if you have 2 things every day, then you're, doing these kinds of things that help to layer that culture. To me, consistency matters more than size. So a small shout out or a visible thank you every day really adds up. And rotate that focus weekly. So, you got your maintenance spotlight is Wednesday this week. Maybe next week it's Friday. So it just feels fresh. You're doing something, switching it up a little bit. And definitely involve campers in gratitude. It reinforces with them that everyone contributes to their camp experience and teaches them the importance of thanking other people and being gracious about it. Camp Code is part of the GoCamp.Pro podcast network, and you can check out all of our other podcasts at GoCamp.Pro/podcasts. So thanks for joining us today and for all the effort you folks put into making staff training so intentionally intentional. Thanks for the listening, friends. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.